We are now going to look at panels in InDesign, and just like with the tool video, I encourage you to use the table of contents to navigate through this and really dial down to the training you need, because this is going to be another lengthy one. So remember, our panels are these objects over here, and we can always adjust what panels we have by resetting the current workspace or by selecting a different workspace. You can also bring additional panels up through the window menu. All of these are panels, and utilize those. For our purposes, we're going to start with the Essentials panel. Then I'm going to add a couple to them and kind of show you my favorite workspace. So first of all, how do you work with this panel? First of all, it can be torn off and moved around, so you can float this if you would rather. You can expand a full view of your tools, or you can shrink them down to only the icons. Completely your call with what you would prefer to work with. You can also move individual panels around, pull them out, close them, etc. So that's just how you work with this very interesting panel concept. And again, you can drag it back over here and dock it. For this exercise, we're actually going to leave it floating. Alright, so first of all, our Pages panel. You can see in this setup we have one page. We can add pages to that. Whatever page is blue is selected, so if you double click, you can select the whole spread. Pages panel also includes a master page, so if I double click, I can hop over to my master. I'm just going to show you quickly what the master page does. Whatever you put on your master page is going to show up on all the pages that have it linked. So you can see now, even in that small preview, I've added it to the master page. It's appearing on all. How is that handy? That's handy because you can do things like add page numbers down at the bottom. And I've added that to the left page. And I will add that to the right page. And when I go to my pages, that page says 1, that page says 3, that page says 2. So that's the advantage of a master page. Those items that you would like to have on all of your spreads can be placed on that master page. You can create additional master pages. You can design something here and save it as a master page. All sorts of different options with your page panel, but that's how you navigate that. The next panel is the Links panel. And the Links panel is going to give you all sorts of important information about the links you have in your document. If you are going to a print press, this is a pretty important panel. For press color printing, you want your images to be saved as CMYK TIFFs at 300 dpi. You can see that that isn't really what's happening here. This is an example. We'll learn more about how to work with your links later. For now, just know that if you click on them, you're going to get all sorts of information about your format, your color space. You can click that and actually go to the link. So as you select different images, go to link. It's going to show you where those photos are. If you have a change that was made to a photo, you can relink it and update it here. You can right click it and choose to edit that document. So you can edit it in Photoshop. If it's Illustrator file, you can edit it in there. And that is your linking panel. Again, we'll talk more about links when we get to our photo unit. Layers, and I think it's important to note that layers in InDesign are not like layers in Photoshop. It's not something that you use a lot of. One way that I occasionally use layers is to make notes, and we've shown you how to use the notes page. You can also use the layers panel. So I can leave notes like that, hide it, reveal it. That's really the only way I have used a layers panel in InDesign. Continuing down, stroke. Whenever we have a stroke line, or if we have an object with a stroke, you can adjust that using the stroke panel. And let's take a look at this line. We can make this larger. Cap, if you want a rounded end to your line, that would be the cap. You can change the type of line, where you want that stroke to align. So for example, I am going to choose an alternative color here. If I want to align it to the inside, to the outside, along the center, you have some different options there with the stroke. You can also create dashes with this. So if we go here to our dashed line, we can make our dashed color a different color. So it almost creates a different look entirely. You can tint that down. Kind of really go into and adjust these. So if you wanted to do 4 and 6. You're going to have different looks for your dashed lines. It would look like that. So those are your options with the stroke panel. Color, and I'm actually going to talk about color and swatches at the same time. So in your color, you have a series of options of how you want to view this. You're probably familiar with RGB. RGB is red, green, blue. It is your screen color, online color. It has an additive of white, so RGB always appears brighter than your CMYK. CMYK is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, or ketone. And finally you have LAB. LAB is for lightness, and then the AB are coordinate ranges in there. Typically, you just need to work with CMYK if you are printing, and RGB if you're going online with an eMag. So, you can go in to your color guide, and we'll just switch this around here, and kind of create your own colors. And when you do, you can drag that in your swatches panel, and then there's your color. And so again, then you have that tint option that comes up when you have that color selected. And you can dial in a different color, and again save it to your swatches. So these kind of work hand in hand. Remember, you always have a fill and then you have a stroke, so keep that in mind as you're working. This little icon lets you flip those back and forth. Let's go back over to the swatches panel. So these are the two colors that I created. If I double click them, I open up a swatch options and I can make additional changes. I can change what the naming is. You have different swatch views, so if you feel like you're not seeing all of your swatches, maybe you accidentally have it on gradients or color groups. So if you want to see them all, ask for them to show them all. You can add a new swatch here. You can also use this drop down and add new color swatches. Note that if you want a tint swatch, that is a separate item. So it'll bring up whatever color you have selected. You can put the tint in and then add that. The next panel is the CC libraries. This is in Creative Cloud, and this allows you to have a library that is shared via the cloud. So you can have different logos and items that you've saved as artwork. So for example, I'll just drag some of these out here for you. This is a little logo and page number that I use for some of my documentation. And wherever I log on with my Adobe ID, I will have these documents. To add to it, it's just a matter of dragging and dropping. I'm going to go ahead and reset my workspace. I'm going to talk about some panels that I like to add to these essentials. I like to add the effects panel. And what the effects panel does is allow you to work with transparencies, layer modes, and effects on objects. So for example, I can change my mode. You can see how that affects that object. And the way layer modes work are it impacts the color below it, so you can see some different effects that we get as an overlay. There's different ways you can adjust these as well. So I could change the opacity of the entire object, or I can change the opacity of just one of the objects. Now earlier we played with the 50% tint of this color. 50% opacity and 50% tint are not the same things, so just note that those do appear differently. I can add effects such as drop shadows or bevel and embosses and start creating some interesting looks for my objects. Now I will give you a warning. The effects tend to work as they appear if you're going online, if you're doing e-publishing. They do not always work for print press. So I would talk with my printer about how those look, maybe do some test runs, just to get an idea of what's going to happen when I send this to print. So effects, it's a keeper. The next panel I like to have open is my paragraph styles panel, and I actually tear it off and keep it by itself. Paragraph styles are something that I enjoy using on documents. It allows you to save styles so you can just quickly apply those, and we'll talk more about that in our video on type. Some other ones I like the Pathfinder and Align and Transform panel, and that's how I actually created this little object. You can add, we'll go down here and do this. So you can create an object, and let's create a little circle out to the side here, and I can unite those together with my Pathfinder. So now it is one object. The Align Pathfinder works to organize objects that are already in your design. So for example, if I wanted to select these 4 photos, and you can kind of tell they're not really aligned properly. So we're going to align them based on their vertical centers. And we'll just click that and you can see they've fallen in line. My final panel that I enjoy using is the text wrap panel. So text wrap allows you to wrap text around an object. And you can see, for example, this text is running right along that photo. So we need to create a text wrap around this photo. So I'm going to select the photo, go over to my text wrap, have my second option, and you can see that blue outline giving me my text wrap. And we'll get more into some text wrap options with our photo videos later. So this would be how I like my panels set up. I like having that text clue there as to what they are. Sometimes I do expand it out, especially if I'm working with a larger screen. And sometimes I move them over to work like this. So working with your panels is kind of a user preference item, and they make life easy.